Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Episode. Here, we're continuing the series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and of course there are more updates on the Nintendo 64 front because Robert, or FPGAZumSpass, does not seem to sleep ever. He keeps releasing cores. So what we're going to be doing on this video is two-part. We're going to be talking about the CPU cache, how it affects performance, and what it looks like when the cache is there. We're also going to be going over some viewer requests of games that I have not yet covered. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But using my favorite example, Super Mario 64, a game pretty much everyone obviously knows and has definitely played, this is running on a core that Robert actually retracted because it still needs some more work, unless it's out by the time you watch this video about 18 hours later, that incorporates the CPU cache. Now in a previous video I told you guys the cache is basically memory for the CPU that can read and write to it. Pretty much every CPU out there has a cache. Your computer or your phone that you're watching this right now has one, but the core didn't have the cache quite yet, but Robert implemented it to see if you could get some games running much closer to full speed. And if you can't tell already, Super Mario 64 here is running at a much improved frame rate. Now I did not put the frame rate counter on the top of the screen, and Andy D helps me with some of these captures, and we've mentioned before when I talked to him not to leave it on. I want you guys to get a sense of the feel of something and not focus on a number. In the future I'll definitely start putting it on, but for right now this is just about the look and the feel of the emotion, something I'm very familiar with as both a Nintendo 64 fan and a filmmaker. Outside of there not being that texture filtering right now, if this was not real Nintendo 64 hardware, you would not feel it. Obviously Mario has no eyes or a mouth, so that's a definite difference, but all the control, all the visuals, all the speed in this core that has cache implemented in it just feels like you're playing real hardware, which is absolutely absurd. Robert's only been working on this thing for a few months, and only in the last 2 weeks has he been doing fundamental updates, and even as Mario scurries up this platform here to get to the top of the level, this is just running amazingly. Now there are some issues with cache. Obviously it's just a first pass and there's going to be some growing pains, so be aware that when new cores come out it's very possible that things do regress. That's pretty much part and parcel for every single Nintendo 64 or other FPGA core on the MiSTer that's in development. Things break before they get better. But we have so many games to show you on this video. We have over 25 minutes worth of fun, so definitely don't look away. But we did get that first star right there, and it is so much fun to play. Now a user on MiSTer Discord did let me use one of his captures because he caught this in the Japanese Rumble edition of Super Mario 64. Different ROMs do different things, and you're going to see Princess Peach here just does not disappear whatsoever. But when you get down on the ground, she is going to reappear. It's absolutely hilarious. It's almost like a meme, and it's so much fun to see something like this. Why is she there? We don't know. Is she going to follow us all around? No, when you go into the castle she disappears. But big thanks to Destry for letting me use this capture. It's hilarious and I'm glad you got it. Now onto the viewer request side of things, a lot of people asked to see Space Station Silicon Valley, and while it's not the Nintendo 64's best game, I definitely have a special place in my heart for it. I got this game new, I think for Christmas one year, and I played the absolute ever-loving hell out of it. It is not as good as something like Super Mario 64 and nowhere near as good as Bomberman Hero, the best game on the Nintendo 64, but it is fun, and if you can't tell already, I'm going to say in every video Bomberman Hero is the best game on the platform. But leave me a comment down below and tell me what your favorite game is. And of course, if you want to see different games featured, leave me a request. I'm sure we will get to them. But right here again, this looks really close to accurate. Obviously texture filtering is not in place, and there is going to be a little bit of graphical issue here and there as that spaceship comes down. But as far as the speed of the game is concerned, it seems like it's running near to, if not perfectly at full speed. Now remember, the Nintendo 64 did not draw every single game at 60 frames a second. Some games could be slideshows, so if you're not familiar with a game, you should look up what the native frame rate of it is so you can better understand how it functions, because sometimes if people aren't familiar with the hardware, they're going to think it's not running full speed, when in reality the game just didn't run that fast on the Nintendo 64. It doesn't run yet, but Perfect Dark's a perfect example of a game that just basically kind of works at like 12 to 16 frames per second. But this game's got an awesome soundtrack, and the core has some awesome audio in it as well. So go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds and come back, because I've got a ton of games to show you that just work right now. Sounds awesome to me. Now let's move back over to Snowboard Kids, and this is the original capture I showed you guys on Saturday. And you can see by the speed, it is not running at full speed. This game runs at a nice clip. It always feels fast and fluid. And I want to show you the before until we get to the after, just to give you guys an example. I'm going to show some side-by-side examples as well, so stay tuned for those. As we get over to the core that does have cache implemented in it, you can see that there is a massive speed improvement. This is fluid, it's smooth, it's all the things you would expect Snowboard Kids to be if you were playing on real hardware outside of that texture filtering. And again, if you've never played this game before, I can't recommend it enough. But moving back to the last capture, you can feel and you can see the difference in speed. It is not running at full speed and it is slowing itself down. Where if we move back over to the new capture with some cache involved, the speed just increases. And that's what the cache does. It's going to speed up the core the same way it speeds up the hardware on the Nintendo 64. If you were somehow able to disable the cache on real hardware without destroying the console, you would get much slower performance than you would see if that cache was enabled. But let's move over to something like Mario Kart. This is on the cache core. You can't quite tell yet compared to other shots, but this is running so much faster. This is just a new course you haven't seen yet. But I am going to do a side-by-side comparison so you can understand, and I use those side-by-side comparisons to a locked frame where something happens identically, so I can put them side-by-side for you to see the difference. But again, it's another massive improvement over where we were, and we're moving so quickly on this core. Everything's responsive, everything looks great, 95% of the graphics are here, you just see a lot more pixels, but again, I absolutely love that. I know some people don't, but tell me down below, are you a big chunky pixel fan or are you a textured filter fan? Because I would be curious about that. Now moving back to the previous video I did on Saturday, you're going to see that the game definitely runs a lot slower, and that's just again down to the cache. If you want a more in-depth explanation of what that is, I will leave an article down below, a link that talks about what the Nintendo 64 cache does in and of itself. But on Moo Moo Meadows here, it just runs so buttery smooth, and I know Robert is targeting this game to perform really well. It's one of his favorites along with Super Mario 64, so I'm sure as new cores come out, you're going to see the most improvements in those two games, and other games that improve will just be bonuses. Now you see you didn't get that screen quite yet. I've locked the frame here to the first frame in which your place number 8 shows up, and you're going to see that we were able to get there so much quicker on the core with cache. And side by side you can see the frame rate difference between the old core on the left and the new core on the right that Robert retracted. But again, it's quite possibly put it up after the recording of this video, so if it is up there, I'll leave a note in the description. But it's smoother, it's more fluid, it's all of the things you would expect the Nintendo 64 to do. You even get that screen up top, but Andy D there did take a little bit of a tumble. That does happen in games sometimes. But this improvement is massive. It's so much fun to show you guys side by side because you can see the difference, and that's why I still don't have the frame rate counter up. I want this to be a look and feel situation, but if you hate the fact that I didn't put that frame rate counter up, tell me down below. Maybe next time I will think about it. But let's take a look at Body Harvest right now, a game that a lot of people requested to see and now does run. Unfortunately, it runs in the seconds per frame and not frames per second. There is some sort of hardware implementation that the core currently does not have, because this game is an absolute slideshow, even with cache involved, which just means that there's a function of the RDP or other component of the Nintendo 64 hardware that is not yet implemented within the core itself. But it is an interesting look to see what it's like when a game runs slowly. This is in real time of the capture. I'm not slowing this down in post, and you can see here as you walk forward, this game is basically an absolute slideshow of an experience. It's definitely not what I would classify as playable, and somebody asked in a previous video in the comments what I consider playable. If you can have fun while you're playing it, if the controls work and the game is as you would expect it to be, that's playable. Something like this was just not playable whatsoever. But another game that everyone requested is Diddy Kong Racing, and you'll see from the intro here, outside of some graphical issues where you see that polygon mesh sometimes, it is running, it looks good, and it does run at a nice speed. It's so much fun to see this game, although honestly, I would say Mario Kart 64 is definitely my preferred kart racer over Diddy Kong Racing. But again, leave me that comment down below. Tell me how you feel about that, because I do feel like there's some debate between which of these games is better. But seeing this run on the core is just spectacular again. I can't stress enough how many improvements have come to this core so quickly, and how much fun it is to talk about all of them, both with people on Discord as well as you guys here on YouTube, because I feel like there's not much of a crossover on Discord and YouTube. I'm sure a few of you are here on both, but honestly I feel like my YouTube audience doesn't hit Discord too much. But as we play this game, the speed is good. There's definitely some highlight issues here. Some of the brightness, some of the effects seem like they're washing the screen out a little bit compared to real hardware. And honestly, Conquer here is not the Conquer I love on Nintendo 64. That would be Bad Fur Day. And that is a game that still doesn't seem to do much of anything, because Rare always did strange things with the hardware that I'm sure have not yet been implemented. But again, just like Mario Kart 64, it's fast, it's fluid, it's how you would expect the game to play. And this is another game in which I like there's no texture filtering. I don't prefer that in most games. Honestly, with the pixels here as you're moving fast, you never even really get a chance to see those big pixels, but it doesn't look as Vaseline-y on the walls or on the floor. I know that's down to preference, but again, this is an example of what the core could do if there's a toggle to have that texture filtering on or off, and I do hope we see that, because per game, I would definitely turn it on for some and off for others. But if you want to play Diddy Kong Racing, it's shaping up really nice on MiSTer, and I do love to see it. Now, another game that's shaping up excellently with that data cache is going to be Wave Race 64. This is running at what seems to be full speed, and again, Wave Race is a game that did kind of fluctuate around, I feel like, on real hardware. But you will see here we have all of the graphics outside of that mesh being on the waves, and the sound is excellent as well now that the game is running full speed. Go ahead and listen for like 35 seconds and come back, because I still have like 8 more games to show you, but this sounds excellent, so enjoy it. Just sounds awesome. And let's move to another course we haven't shown you yet in these previews. I just love this Golden Hour Sunset level. And when this game first came out in the Nintendo 64, it was mind-blowing. Obviously now we have much better water effects, but what Nintendo 64 was doing with the liquid and the physics with the jet skis on them was nothing short of spectacular back in the 90s. And it looks so good here. And again, I just love that you can see the polygon mesh for the water. You can see how this was made, how they used those polygons to create the surface as well as the wave that you ride over. It's just a really fun visual indicator of how these things actually work, because a lot of people have probably never thought about how the water worked in Wave Race, but on the current core, you can 100% see how it works for yourself. It's a ton of fun, and I absolutely recommend it. Now let's move over to a game that's become fundamentally more playable than the last time I showed it to you on Saturday, and that's going to be Duke Nukem 64. This is what it looks like on the newest core right here, and in just a moment I'm going to quickly move over to the old core so you can see the difference. Drop down the shaft, we are now at the old core. This is what Duke Nukem 64 used to look like. Obviously there was something in the RDP rendering that was not yet in the code, but if we move back over to the new core, you're going to see this just looks like Duke Nukem. Now there are some issues in the sprite, some of which are comically hilarious, and I will show those to you in just a moment, but again, this is another fundamental improvement on how this current core works. A lot of what's in RDP is implemented, but a lot of what's in RDP isn't implemented. The more cores we get, the more features we'll have. You can see right now some of the sprites are coming over top the other things in the environment. It's going to become a lot funnier in just a moment, but just pay attention to that so when the joke comes up, you'll understand what you're supposed to be looking for. But again, it's a game that just has such fundamental improvements to where we previous were. You will see here, this is a good example, the enemy is behind the pillar and he's not aggroed yet because he can't see us, even though we can see him based upon that graphical priority. But when we get down there, we can give him the mighty boot and absolutely crush him, no questions asked. And you can see again, we know the shotgun's behind the door, we know there's an enemy behind the door, but we shouldn't quite yet know that. And I'm sure in future cores, that graphical priority is going to be improved. But as we go into the bathroom here, watching this monster take a dump before he even knows we're here is just pure for hilarity. I may use that for the thumbnail, we'll see. But it's so impressive to see how much more of Duke Nukem you can actually experience. It's a game, it's running, it's got some slight graphical issues, but otherwise, this is like 90% of the way there. But of course, don't forget, this is on a Nintendo 64 console, not a PlayStation console, and definitely not on PC. So you are going to get some of the blood in your enemies. If you actually turn the theater projector on and make sure that curtain's drawn back, you are not going to see a woman, you're going to see a nuclear explosion, which is fun in its own right, but definitely different than what we were used to. And in the improvement department, we have Turok the Dinosaur Hunter, and there's a lot more of Turok to see. Last time this was in silhouette, it was just a black silhouette with a couple of characters in the background and absolutely no skybox. You're going to be seeing a lot more of them right here. And again, it's got an awesome soundtrack with some really good sound effects, and it sounds really good on the current MiSTer core. So go ahead and listen for like 35 seconds to come back, because I got still more games to show you. Looks like Turok, sounds like Turok, but there's no fog, and honestly, that is definitely a mode I would love to keep in a finalized core. Not having to deal with the fog effect that obscured a lot of the drawn distance will definitely give you more pop-in like you see here, but I think in a lot of games I'd much rather have the pop-in than I would the fog. But again, leave me a comment down below. I know that's not the authentic experience, but the great thing about MiSTer is it can give us the authentic experience, and then it can also allow us to do things that were never intended to be done on the real hardware. Stuff like turning off anti-aliasing, turning off texture filtering, and turning off fog and having that draw pop in. Those are things that I would definitely play on a lot of games, and I would be curious to hear what you want to do, so tell me down below. But let's move back over to Super Mario 64, because I can't talk about this game enough. Bomb on Battlefield still has this issue with the washed out white over the textures, but the speed in the core that has cache implemented is just so much better than we've seen before. This is definitely running at the speed you would expect it, and as we get up to the top here, everything just looks great outside of that washed out texture. It is still mind-blowing to me that we've come this far this quickly. Robert definitely knows what he's doing, and so many people leave comments so impressed by him. But don't forget, there's probably something you're amazing at too that none of us could do, and that's my Bob Ross moment for the day. You were special. I love you guys for watching this, and don't forget, there's probably something out there you're incredible at. But what Robert's incredible is getting these revisions done and getting them done quick. Hopefully he does take a break though. I know what it's like to get into a project and not look up. You forget to eat, you forget to drink, you just start focusing on what you're doing. So don't forget, just because this is the speed of the improvements right now doesn't mean that Robert will take another month to show us the next core. That is the development cycle, and we wait on him. But just moving around in Peach's castle here with the speed going through the doors, it just feels like Mario. And this is another game in which I actually like seeing the pixels on the walls, on the floor, and everywhere else. It's like we've never seen this game before this way, and honestly playing it in the core makes it feel like the first time I played this game again. I still have the same excitement and the same sense of wonder playing a game I played over 2 decades ago on MiSTer. And that's what I love about this project. It doesn't just give us a new way to play a game, it gives us a new experience that we have never had before. But moving over to Bomberman Hero, obviously I've said earlier, my favorite game on the Nintendo 64 and my favorite 3D Bomberman of all time. The speed has improved remarkably. Unfortunately, with that speed, there are some other crashes that are going on that didn't used to crash before, and I know that Robert is taking a look at those. But you'll see here as we jump around on Bomberman Hero with the cache, everything feels fluid. And if we move over to the previous core that I showed on Saturday without the cache, it is definitely not running anywhere near at the same frame rate. The difference is the core with no cache gets further into the game, but the core with the cache does have freezing issues, and I know Robert's looking into that into the background, trying to understand why those things are happening. And like I said earlier, it's possible that an hour before this video goes live, he fixes that freezing problem, and we'll be back in 2 days with another video. But you'll see here as we get in the corner, you throw the bomb, it explodes, we'll throw another one, and then very suddenly it's going to freeze, and that's what we get. Now another game, of course, everyone wanted to see is Donkey Kong 64. Now you're not going to get very far into it whatsoever. If you don't mash start, you're going to get frozen in the donkey wrap, and if you don't press start quick enough on the title screen, you can also get stuck in a freeze loop. But you will see here you can get into the menu and you can see the opening cinematic, but it is going to freeze during it. But honestly, the music's great, and I want to give you one more sound sample in this video, so go ahead and listen to Donkey Kong for like 20 seconds and I'll be back for more games. And right there it froze, and that is the situation with Donkey Kong 64 right now. Of course it wouldn't be a video about the Nintendo 64 core progress if we didn't talk about Superman 64, and trust me, you don't want to stop here. This game is not fun, but we have Banjo-Kazooie directly after it. But honestly, the core is definitely becoming worse because Superman 64 is becoming more playable. But hey, the fog's not here and that is fine. All jokes aside, you know, they did try with this game, honestly. No developer sets out to make a bad game, and obviously Superman 64 is the meme game of choice on the console because the gameplay just isn't there. But it's one of those things, you can't fault them for trying because they did try to make a fun game, and it is one of those situations where we can see a lot more of the graphics on screen in the current core. Unfortunately, that doesn't do anything to make the game any more fun. It is just kind of a slog, and honestly I keep making the joke that if the core is finished, I hope there's a no Superman 64 mode. But it's one of those things, it's one of those games that's remembered very well on the Nintendo 64 for all the wrong reasons, but it's still a really good visual example to show you of how the core is progressing. But the next one, Banjo-Kazooie, is going to be much more fun because that game is also fun. And of course, flying through these rings is an absolute impossibility. It takes a pro gamer move just to get through half of them, but as usual, you're going to see what happens here in the next shot. We're going to run out of time, and Lex Luthor is going to win. It's like that 10 out of 10 times, you really can't change fate, and Superman 64 is hard as hell. But hey, not every single game on a console can be a winner, but speaking of winners, Banjo-Kazooie, absolutely excellent game, one that I remember playing back in the day and I love. And watching the intro here that I did show you in the previous video, again with the cache, it is running at a lot faster of a clip. Now there is some issues with the textures at the corners. I talked to some developers that know the Nintendo 64 hardware, and it involves a wraparound mode where the texture is supposed to wrap around the seam. That does not seem to be implemented in the current core. It seems to be something that Rare used a lot with their games, so when you see those little white things, apparently that has to do with the texture wraparound. Now I'm not a developer or an artist, so I'm not 100% sure exactly how it functions, but that's what's going on here. And as you see as we get into the game with the core with cache, just how fast and smooth this is running. Everything looks good as far as what the core currently has implemented in it. But let's move over to the previous video where I showed Banjo-Kazooie last time, and you're going to see the frame rate is going to get much choppier. This is what the game runs like without the cache implemented, and that is why the cache is so important to the Nintendo 64 hardware and CPUs in general. It's basically on absolutely everything. But moving back over to the current core, you'll see that that speed just 100% gets faster. It's fluid, the camera movements are smooth, it's everything you want to see in a game, and of course this is one of those games everyone seems to love it. Now somebody on the MiSTer Discord literally sat down when this game became playable and they beat it from start to finish. It did not freeze, it did not hang. They saw the end credits of Banjo-Kazooie. They must have played the game 100 times before to be able to do it on a work-in-progress FPGA core, but you can beat it. Now one game that I showed last video that I want to talk about again because it's another great example of the speed up is going to be Cruisin' World. It is a fun game. It's not the best racing game in the world, but it is a good time. On the current core, it feels like it's running maybe like 75 to 80% of the speed of what the actual game would run, and I use the timer up at the top there. It feels a little bit slower than a second if I use my frame counter. But if we go over to the original capture I did last week in just a moment, you're going to immediately see how slow the game gets and how slow that timer gets. I'm not saying it's slow as a dig on the core, I'm just talking about the reality of it. Those numbers count down slower, the game runs slower, everything is just basically maybe like 50% of the speed of what you're going to see right now when we move over to the core with the cache. That is a fundamental difference, and that is what the cache is doing. And you can just see in the camera movements, the cars, and the timer how much better it is when we actually have that there. And this game is another one of those games that pretty much everyone seemed to have played on the Nintendo 64. Maybe more people played Cruisin' USA than Cruisin' World, but I had this game back in the day, and I absolutely love playing it with friends, and I love playing it again here. It's been like 5 or 6 years since I've actually checked this game out, but it feels brand new and fresh with MiSTer. Even if you go back to the previous core with a lower frame rate, I still love playing it. The soundtrack's great as well. Last audio sample, and I'll be right back. Looks great, sounds great, and plays great. I would say Cruisin' World on the current Nintendo 64 MiSTer FPGA core is an awesome time with an awesome game to boot. But that is the current slate of tests, both on the core with the cache that Robert pulled back, as well as the previous Saturday core, showing you guys the difference. And hopefully Robert irons out that issue and bug he was having with that, and we can play it soon. But I will give you guys credit. Not a single person in the comments is ever upset about having to wait around for a new version. Everyone's so excited to see the progress, and that makes me super happy that no one's out there saying, why won't he hurry up and work any quicker? But honestly, in Robert's instance, I don't think he could hurry up and work any quicker. He's already working too hard. Sure that I will see you guys with more MiSTer next time. Bye bye.